Hi, I'm Tracy Parisi, and with me today I've got Tanya Summerton from Divorce Angels. And today we're discussing separation and divorce and lots of different topics around separating and divorce and why it's so hard and what we can do to make it easier. So, Tan, I know in my situation, I was separated from my husband for about 3 years and absolutely stuck. I mean, we, for the first 12 months, shared the house because both of us were too scared to move out. We were in a situation where there wasn't a lot of blame and anger. It just didn't work. And we tried we were together for 22 years and tried to make it work. We did everything under the sun to make it work, counselling and personal development stuff. We did everything. But at the end of the day, it just didn't work, and I was miserable, and I was making him miserable. So for the first 12 months, we even lived under the same roof, and then one of us would go stay with a friend. So we did week on, week off with the kids. I met someone, which then I couldn't keep living, like that with him. So it didn't work. So that was sort of like the catalyst for me to make change. But in the meantime, it's 3 years down the track, and I still haven't done the divorce because I just felt frozen and I didn't know what to do, who to talk to. I'd heard so many stories about people spending heaps of money with solicitors. And then I met you at a networking function and heard about what you do and learnt what you do and knew I had to have a conversation with you. But most people aren't going to meet you at a networking function. They're going to find you through one of your ads on Facebook or through one of your videos on YouTube. So can you tell people what you do? Like, what is a divorce angel, first of all? And then I think we'll talk about the things that stop people and how you help move them emotionally as well as all the legal stuff.
Oh, so thanks, Trace, for doing this interview with me. I feel very honoured. Yes, we did meet at a networking group, and yes, the reason this business started was because back when I got divorced, I'm very process driven, and I was trying to find on Google the quickest and easiest way to get divorced, to sort of streamline it, to try and mitigate any risks, and I didn't want to make any more mistakes. So when your relationship is, let's say, failed, or in your case, you fall out of love, mine was sort of a little bit similar. 22 years married, 3 kids, never ever thought I would get divorced. I came from divorced parents and decided that was something I never ever wanted to do. But sometimes it's no one's mistake. Sometimes people just grow apart, people change. There's life experiences that happen, whether it can be stresses at work, whether it can be mental, whether it can be some sort of physical breakdown. Sometimes things happen and it's not our fault. And once I realised that, okay, I felt like a failure, I felt like you, tried very, very hard, and I just felt this awful guilt, I realised that I didn't want to make any more mistakes. So I was 40, wanted to make sure that whatever happened, I didn't hurt my children, I didn't hurt my ex-husband, I didn't hurt our wider family. So, my in-laws, I still love them dearly. They're a really important part of my life. So making sure that whatever way we did it was amicable. I didn't want to be going to a lawyer and before we knew it, we were spending $100,000, because they were the stories I heard all the time. So after doing my research, I found that there was nothing out there that could fulfill what my requirements were. And I wondered why. And I was speaking to other people and everyone was saying the same thing. My divorce cost me $50,000. My divorce cost me $100,000. Oh, I can't stand him. He's just, he's awful and all the rest of it. And I just wondered why the world was turning out to be like it was, like there had to be a better way. So that's when I got together with some other really amazing women, and we were just workshopping what the issues were in society and why we found ourselves in this position. And if you look at the stats, 40% of first-time marriages fail, 70% of second-time marriages, and 90% of third-time marriages all fail. And when you do a deep dive into those stats, to me it was simple. The reason that Well, firstly, the 40%, we can't do much about that. But the 70%, it's because we're jumping out of one relationship into another. We've got all these preconceived ideas. If you're a woman, that, men are awful. And if you're a man, oh, they're just bitches. And it doesn't need to be like that. There's a better way. And as human beings, we should be teaching each other to live and love with respect. And I'm really lucky, and I know you are too, because now we are friends, that you're lucky to have had your ex in your life. I'm really lucky to have my ex in my life, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
So I know I'm lucky because we'd done a lot of personal development, and we had already decided, 10 years before we split up, that we weren't going to play the blame game, because it was just how it was. You had some pretty traumatic stuff happen to you. So how did you not blame him or be upset with him, or how did you come to that mindset?
I feel now, looking back, and like you, having done a lot of work on myself, there's two people in every relationship. And whenever I sit down with a client, if they blame the other person, I don't want to work with them, because there's two people in a relationship. So both of us need to take some form of responsibility for what's happened. In my instance, I knew what was sort of going on. I knew that there was things that were happening, and it was easier for me just to let him go and do it, because at the end of the day, I wanted to be myself. I'd sort of probably fallen out of love with him. The stress was getting too much. So in my case, my ex-husband was, liked to have a bet. So he'd just go off and have a bet, or he'd go to the casino, whatever the case may be. And I knew he was going, and I allowed him to go. So I had to take responsibility that the demise of our relationship come about from reasons that I was part of. I allowed them to happen.
For you, it was about not having the courage to speak up? Or because you wanted to protect your marriage and keep it all on an even keel? So was it a courage thing, or what was it that made you not speak up, that you think, okay, I need to take responsibility for this?
Oh, look, when I married my ex-husband, our first date was to the races. That's when you meet someone, you take on all of the things that make them happy, and that made him happy. And look, he's a really good person. He's a good father to my children. He was a good husband to me. We just went our separate ways, and then there was a catalyst of a whole lot of stuff that happened, unfortunately, at one particular time, which caused, let's say, the demise of our relationship. But if I was truly honest, I'd sort of probably fallen out of love some years earlier, because I'm the sort of person that is quite ambitious, that wants to make a difference in the world, wants to try and help people. And, and I probably wasn't allowed to do a lot of those sorts of things. I was sort of, I was a stay-at-home mum at that stage, 3 children, helped the footy club, did all those sorts of things that were great, but they really didn't fulfill this need in me to help people. So looking back now, when I was looking to try and get help and support to get divorced, there was really nothing out there. So that's how this business really came about. So it was a need that I found for myself, and I had other girlfriends and male friends that were saying the same thing. There's nothing out there.
So what about for couples where it's toxic, or there is domestic violence or verbal abuse? What about those situations? Because I've been through an abusive relationship early on in my life. My eldest son's father was abusive, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I could take responsibility for the part I played in that. So what do you say to people who are going through that? And look, it happens on both sides. I know men who are abused by women and vice versa. So I don't want to make it a gender thing, because I know you work with both men and women. So it's all well and good for us to say, well, that it takes 2 to tango. You have to take responsibility for your part. What do you say to women who are or men, I suppose, who are in a domestic violence or abusive or toxic relationship?
Oh, it's such a great question, because I myself have never been in one. So it's very hard, for me to give advice to someone who's sitting in the middle of a toxic relationship that is, maybe getting whether it be physical, mental, financial, because it happens in all different forms. And, we've had quite a lot of clients who have been, let's say financially abused. So they're only given a certain amount of money every week, and they're too scared to leave because how are they going to survive? How are they going to support their children? Same thing with verbal, people just don't, relationships are about respect. And we know deep in here when something's not right, but sometimes we just don't have the people that we can ring and support. And at the moment we've got 3 clients that are from domestic abuse. So what can I do to help? I give them the ability to contact someone to help empower them to actually, before they've even left the relationship, to have some form of strength so that they know that there's a support network if they leave out there that can help and support them. But yeah, you're right. How can someone who's in a domestic violence relationship, how can I sit here and say they're enabling it? But when you talk to the professionals, to some extent, we just become shells of ourselves and we let it happen. And later on we look back and we probably go, we should have done things differently. But everything is a journey, and you'll do it on your own terms, and you'll do it when you're ready, or when that person comes into your life, whether in your case it was me that came into your life and said, okay, Trace, how do we get this done so you can move on with your life? That will happen in a lot of cases to those people, but they've got to have a want to do it too, because
so you're not saying you have to take responsibility for the abuse. You're saying, it's about taking responsibility for yourself, your own feelings, how much you empower yourself, and then what you can do to strengthen yourself so you do have the courage to leave, and you're armed with whatever you need emotionally, financially, physically, to keep safe. So
yeah,
it's about just, even if it's that little corner of your world that you get to go, you know what, I can take responsibility for that. And even if it's baby steps, even if it's just in your thoughts on what you feed yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what it was like. If you say something and someone's going to hit you, you're just not going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to stand up to them, say something, and before you know it, you end up in hospital. I mean, as I said, I've never been there, but there's some of the stories that I've heard and some of the conversations I've had with people. You'd never put someone in that place. But, what it might be is just a conversation and preparation and just, and also it can just be a conversation, because in a lot of cases what I've found with our clients is people around them aren't aware. Or one particular client that I know of, that story is just dreadful, her family knew that it was going on. They all sort of alienated because they couldn't help her. They then chose to step away and leave her to deal with it herself. And she felt so isolated by the whole thing that, by the time her and I had a conversation, it was putting support groups in place for her. So she had the expertise of a subject matter expert that could help her, because that's not me. I don't do that. But what I do is I enable it. So I help them. I give them the resources. I hold their hand. I'll say, go and have a chat to this person. This person can really help you, or whatever the case may be. But we're giving them sort of a little bit of strength and support. But by no means, when it comes to domestic violence, am I an expert at it. It's not something that I tend to be an expert at. But what I do is I can put people in touch with the people that can seriously help them.
So Tanya, what's the journey you take people on? So people find you, and what do you actually do for your clients? That's different to say, if I just ring a solicitor, because I didn't know, do I ring a solicitor? I need to work out the accountant because we had a business and property. Do I need to talk to a financial planner? Like, who do I go to? So what is it that you do with your clients?
Well, this is really how this business started, because at the end of the day, if you go to a lawyer isn't a financial advisor and they're not an accountant. So they cannot and should not ever be giving advice on how you should be dividing your assets and what that looks like. So what my business does is we sit there and we take a full list of assets and liabilities of the couple, and we try and put a clear picture together before we've even gone to a lawyer. So we do a lot of that pre-work with our clients. And what that means is by the time they've turned up to the lawyer, they've got some idea as to what the outcome is. So in a lot of cases, people will just turn up and go, you know, look, I don't know, our marriage has fallen apart. I want to get a divorce, but, you know, I'm here for you to help me. So you're going to the lawyer to say, what's my next steps? But in a lot of cases, a lawyer can only help you from a legal perspective because that's their area of expertise. So I sort of see myself pretty much as the person that gives you the process, tells you how and what you should be doing, and then helps you put framework to control each of those different areas. So for example, say you've got some investment properties. Say, you know, one of them might be earning a greater income than the other, or one might have more equity in it than the other. You might not be able to service the refinancing of a loan, so you might suggest, I want to keep this property, but at the end of the day, you can't service the loan, so there's probably no point. So we put a strategy together to say, before you've even gone to a lawyer, we already know that the client can't keep this property because of the serviceability, or we already know that the client doesn't want to keep this property because if we sit there and look at what's going on in the environment, whether it's in a, let's say, a mining town, or whether it's just up the road and, you know, I don't know, there's not good rental yields or something like that, we do all that homework with the client. So we give the client, go and research this, find this out, do this sort of bit of due diligence beforehand. So before they've even spoken to a lawyer, they've got a clear picture of what it is that they want from the separation and divorce from an assets perspective.
And what will work financially for them. Because you've had situations in the past where someone wants to leave someone and they want to take on the property on their own. They go to a mortgage broker, get the property refinanced, only to find they really can't afford to keep it. And so it's the mortgage broker has really taken them down the wrong path because it was never going to work anyway. And they've spent money on, you know, trying to keep a property that they really can't. So you, in doing that, so I know in my case, when you and I were speaking, I was like, oh, I want to be able to keep my home and how can I pay him out? And, you know, in our situation, I'd earned money in our company, but not a lot personally. So I wouldn't qualify for a loan at that point anyway, until I restructured my finances. So it was you who got me to see clearly it won't work, Trace. Like, we have to separate the emotional part from what actually works financially. So work with people on working that stuff out as well, like untangling the emotions from the what's so of a situation.
And that's exactly right. So what we need to do is we need to have a commercial aspect of the separation, and we need to have an emotional aspect. So that's what we do. So, you know, from the biggest message that I can give to anyone that is going through a separation of divorce is to get counselling before they even go into debating about what finance and assets that they want out of the relationship. The reason is if you tackle it from a place of love and forgiveness and amicable, the difference can be simply, you know, unbelievable. Not only from a financial perspective, so whether that's still 50K you've got in your back pocket to start your next life, but it's also from an emotional aspect, because emotional responses have a financial detriment to our decision making. So when we're really emotional, sometimes we do it from a place of hate rather than a place of, okay, let's just move on, and there's an opportunity cost here. So if we get this all over and done with, okay, we might be losing $5,000 or we might be losing $10,000. But if we quickly move on, that means we can make that money up plus more in another area of our life. So it's looking at this from a holistic perspective and making sure that you've got everything in place. So, you know, we want to make sure that you certainly can control your budget, like you said, that if you want to keep the house, that you can afford to keep the house. And if you can't, let's put a strategy in place to understand why. Because with you and I, when I sat down and explained to you why you couldn't keep the house, even though emotionally you wanted to because you'd done so much work and effort into making such a beautiful asset, you got it. So once you understood why, the decision was so much easier than it being forced upon you. So you imagine if you guys had gone to a lawyer, you got a letter from a lawyer that said you've got to sell your house, you would absolutely hate your ex-husband because you'd feel like he forced you into doing something that you had no control over.
Well, even trying to make that decision without untangling, because it is emotional. I was coming from an emotional place, like I've worked so hard, I designed this home, I built it myself, I've worked hard in business, I deserve to keep this house, rah, 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 rah. And in untangling the financial aspect and having a better understanding of that with you, it meant that I could free myself up from the past and create an amazing future. Like, yeah, okay, I've decided to sell my house, but what that means now is I'm freeing up a bunch of equity for myself. I can move on and I can go and buy a couple of investment properties. My ex can move on and he can go he wants to move more into commercial stuff. So it means that we're both freed up to create a future that's really empowering. Whereas before I felt stuck.
We felt trapped.
I would have been stuck for so long because he was similar to me. We were just like, oh, we don't want to lose any money. It's, you shouldn't sell assets. Like all these beliefs that we had around how to make decisions, which weren't serving us. And it was through my conversations with you that I got to see, you know what, I'm not actually stuck. I can untangle this stuff and it frees me up now to create whatever I want for myself and my future and for my children.
And that's exactly right. So this is such a big issue that I have with a lot of clients, especially women. Unfortunately, women think that they've got to stay in the home. And in a lot of cases, when they stay in the home, it becomes not only a place of, let's say, a mortuary where they're walking around and they're remembering the past and what may have happened and whatever. It also becomes an anchor around their neck because they're struggling to pay the bills. And in a lot of cases, the houses are deteriorating around them and they don't have someone they can rely on to come and fix this or to do that. Yep. And I'm not saying what I did was right, but I remember when I was one night sitting on my bed, crying my eyes out, thinking, how the hell am I going to turn my life around? I've just lost everything from a 22-year-old marriage. We worked really hard. We were quite well off. And, went from that to sort of having nothing. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to do what everyone else does. I'm not going to be a sheep. I'm not going to do what society tells me to do. And even my parents, to some extent, like my parents were saying, why don't you just buy another house? Just go and buy a primary place of residence that you and the kids could live in. But I knew I had to be different and I had to think differently. So what I did with my little bit of money that I walked away with, so I bought 3 investment properties.
So you didn't walk away with a ton of money either. Like you were like, I know you and I have had the conversations. It's like you were the Hallmark family with the beautiful home and the cars and the business and all of that. You didn't walk away with gazillions of bucks to go start again. You really had to think about things differently.
Oh, I walked away after selling back 8 years ago a $1.3 million house, which now is probably worth $2 million. After selling that house, I walked away with, I think I had $165,000 or something in the bank. And with that $165,000, I spent 40 grand on education, which was such a scary thing to do, but I knew I had to do it differently. I wasn't prepared to just do what everyone else. I didn't want to have the regrets. And
because you'd been a stay-at-home mum, right? So you were starting not just losing everything, you had to I had worked a new career and learn how to go out to the workforce. And
I had to start pretty much my whole life just turned around on a coin overnight. but you know, these were my decisions. I chose to leave the relationship. I chose to have a better life. I chose to put steps in place to improve what was going on. And I wanted my kids to know that even when through adversity, you can pull your socks up and you can make, you know, a really good existence for yourself. And I'm really proud to say that that's what I've done. You know?
So rather than focusing on the past and what you'd lost, you made the decision to create a brand new future and not worry about how much money you'd lost, because most people go, I'll never make it back again. I worked 20 years for that and I slogged my ass off for that. So you decided not to go down that track and to create a brand new future, starting with nothing.
Yeah.
And you did it, and that's what you help people do. So it's not just the legal divorce stuff. You also support them emotionally in seeing that there's a whole big wide world out there and there's something bigger than themselves out there, than what their current set of circumstances are.
Yeah, and that's right. And that's why I call my teams around Australia our army of angels, because every person that I refer a client to has either been in a similar situation or has got an expertise in that sort of situation where they can help people think differently. And it's all about, just because that's where you've been doesn't mean where you have to stay. We want to make sure that you know, the future, the possibilities are endless. You've just got to have drive, tenacity. Oh my gosh,
Tenacity.
that's it. And be able to you know, think differently. But sometimes people come into your life, and those people are there for a reason, and they'll teach you different ways. But you know, life is just full of possibilities. We can make money back. We really can. You know, today in the world that we live in with the internet and that sort of stuff, if you can think up an idea, then you can execute that idea, and before you know it, you might have a supplementary income. So money isn't it. It's in here. You've got to feel like you're stronger, that you can do something, that you can make a difference, that life will be okay. You've got to believe it. And if
So do you help people find that belief? Do you help people, so when you have clients who are really down and out, because let's face it, when you split up with someone, the heartache can be so bad, you feel like there's nothing. So do you help people discover some little spark in themselves so that they can? Because, you know, I'm sure people would listen to this and go, oh, well, it's all right for her. She had a positive attitude. Or, you know, do you help people discover that little spark in themselves so that there is a brighter future? Like, I know you were saying to me, you had spoken to a client last week, a brand new client, and you and I got on the phone, and you gave me goosebumps, because you were the woman that you'd spoken to. She was like down and out, could not get herself off the couch. 20 minutes on the phone with you, and she was like full of possibilities and full of excitement. And so, like, what, I know this question's been a really long one, but what was the conversation you had with her that she's gone from doona dived on the couch for months because she's so heartbroken and life's terrible, to a 20-minute conversation with you, and she's like full of possibility and excitement?
Well, if you think about it, think about the message that's out there about divorce. You know, I'm such a believer that divorce does not have to be the end. It can be the beginning. It can be the start of something amazing. And our journey throughout life comes that, in my instance, and I know in yours, that my 22 years of marriage taught me to be the person I am today. So if I hadn't gone through that adversity, and let's be honest, I had a lot more good years than I did bad. But at the end of it, there's possibilities. But when you think about you all of a sudden your life is coming to an end, or that's how you see it, you're laying on the couch, you're depressed, you don't know where to go, you don't know who to talk to. I have to go to a lawyer, and that lawyer could cost me 10, 20, 100 grand. Oh, there's nothing. Like, your future just seems to be abysmal.
Yeah,
completely. Where my conversation with her was along the lines of, just because that's where you find yourself right now doesn't mean that that's where you need to stay. You know, just everything happens, and I've got this saying that every marathon is won with one step at a time. That's all she had to do. Get up off the couch, get dressed, and start to think about what it was that she wanted in her life. And by the end of the conversation, she said, I didn't realise that I could still do all this. I've been feeling so bad about what's happened, but when I think about the possibilities, yes, they make me excited, and I just need to start thinking differently. And sometimes it's just a switch in our head. But let me put it to you this way. Both of us have been through this, so when you're going through it, you just can't imagine what's going to happen and how bad it's going to be. I'm here to say, from the moment you get separated to the moment or to where you are right now, that's the journey. The journey's the exciting part. That journey is what builds us to be who we are. That's why, rather than think about it as a bad thing, every day where we step outside of our boundaries or we do something that feels uncomfortable, that's where the growth happens. And when the growth happens, unbelievable. Anything can happen in our life.
So really, if people are thinking about leaving their partner because they've been ignoring stuff or something's just been thrown at them, because you can wake up one day and your whole life can be altered through one conversation. So you can discover something about your partner. I could wake up today, have a conversation with my partner, find out he's been betraying me and lying to me. So it can happen within the blink of an eye. All they need to do is have a conversation with you, really, because it starts with just a quick chat with you.
Yeah, look, a quick chat, and life is full of options. And when you don't know what the options look like, you can feel really trapped and you feel like you have to stay. But, I have to be really clear here. I am not about people leaving marriages. I want everyone's marriage to survive. But if you find yourself in a position where it's not going to survive and you know that you've done everything and you can't make it work, then you give me a call. Because we've had the most amazing conversations, so I know you're not a high pressure chick. You're not a big saleswoman. It's like you're truly out there to make a difference for people. At the end of the day, the value comes in my conversation with every client. They teach me something as well. And I'm so lucky that I can have a conversation with someone that is or doesn't realise that there's possibilities, and then at that end of that conversation I have goosebumps or I'm crying because I've made a difference to someone else's life. Like, I'm the one that's lucky.
Oh, that's beautiful. So then even if you're walking away with 50K or 100K or 150K, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's stuff we can do to get ourselves back on track and create more wealth than we had in our marriage because we're in control. We can create amazing careers that we didn't even think were possible. And that all happens from being empowered and creating, like stepping through their separation and divorce with you, and it not about being the anger and the blame and everyone becomes a loser. So it's
exactly.
Even if there's like 50 or 100K left, what you're saying is that we can all create amazing futures with that.
100%. You just have to know what options are out there and what are available. Because if you don't know what options are available, then you're just going to go down a path. And I suppose the easiest way for me to explain this to you is I had one of the banks give me a call, or someone that worked at a bank not long ago, and he gave me a call and he said, we've got this real issue where we've got lawyers telling clients not to pay their mortgages, because if they don't pay the mortgage, the partner either has to sell the house or something like that happens. But he said what we're finding is now people are getting adversely affected on their credit reports, and by doing that means that they can't then go on and start a new life. And he told me about two gentlemen, for instance. One of them was on $400,000 a year, and his lawyer, because let's call it like it was a high net worth sort of divorce, because of the income that this guy was earning, and they wanted the ex to sell the house and she wouldn't, they stopped paying the mortgage, so the bank would foreclose. Now, this was the instructions that the lawyer gave the client. And the client followed it because, well, I'm paying this lawyer money, that's what I'm meant to do. And then I get a phone call from the bank to say, this guy can't even borrow money for another, who knows, 6-7 years, because now his credit report is down the toilet. So they're the things that we put in place. We put those strategies in place. So if someone's telling you something, we go back and do checks and balances and make sure that those checks and balances are right for you. Because if they're not, you could follow the advice of someone, and if they're not on your team, or if you really don't feel like they're in your corner, the advice could be wrong.
We might even feel like they're in our corner, but we take their advice because they're the expert, they're the lawyer, they know what they're doing. We don't, so we do follow advice. But then what you're saying is a lot of the time the advice adversely affects a client, that then there's ramifications for 6, 7, 10 years down the track. That you make sure that whatever advice, if they've already seen a solicitor, that the advice is right and not going to affect them adversely, or that there are structures in place to make sure that they get up and get going quickly again.
Yeah, so like, you know what the process looks like. So I've got 3 different ways of helping a client. But if our client comes into our 5 steps to a seamless divorce, we help them by giving them spreadsheets so they understand what they need to do. They put together a divorce folder, and that the divorce folder goes to the lawyer. We hand it over to the lawyer. We help our clients to let's say, manage the lawyer. Now, the lawyer, in a lot of cases, if you speak to people that have been divorced, they'll say, oh, they didn't get back to me on time. The bill was astronomical because I rang up and made a phone call and I did this and all that. So we give our clients tools to actually be able to help them to know what they can and can't say to a lawyer, because lawyers can be intimidating. They really can. But at the end of the day, they're just human beings like you and I. And a lawyer is on your team, and there's some excellent lawyers, don't get me wrong, some absolutely amazing lawyers out there, but there's also some bad ones. And when you know how you can talk to a lawyer, and if you've got some tips and tricks on how you can save money by going through the legal process, isn't that a benefit? Because in a lot of cases, people just let it go. They'll just let it go. They'll wait for them to get back in contact with them. They'll wait for them to follow up. They're too scared to make a phone call because they're too scared of how much it's going to cost them. So that whole process is stressful in itself. So having someone that can sit there and go, right, here's a spreadsheet, here's a checklist, go through this, make sure that when you talk to your lawyer that you ask this. We coach our clients in when they're talking to the lawyer to make sure they've got a list of all the questions. They quickly get on the phone, they go through them. There's some of those tips and tricks that people just aren't aware of that in some cases can save you anywhere between, $2,000 and $10,000 if they're done properly, depending on how comprehensive the file is. But it's that sort of stuff that we do, and we can help our clients. And then we take it to the next step with the financial stuff, making sure that wills and beneficiaries, superannuation policies, trauma policies, all those sorts of things are addressed. And these are some of the things that people forget about, because I know I didn't realise some of that when I was going through mine. But now, we've got lists of everything that needs to be done when you're going through this, so you make sure that you're covered off. So I see myself as, the divorce advocate. If I can help the client and they know how they can quickly get through this, my goal is at the end of every divorce, people come out better. So you start off here and you feel like you're in a world of hurt, but by the end you go, you know what, that wasn't so bad. And then when it's not so bad, you treat your ex completely differently, which means you have a better life moving forward. And isn't that what we all want?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the impact on the kids is, like you're not damaging your kids.
But it's not even the kids. You think about it. We're a family unit. We humans love to have everyone around us. So it's our sister-in-laws, our brother-in-laws, our parents-in-laws, it's our husband's friends or our wife's friends. Why would we want to alienate everyone in our life? Where if we can do it from an amicable place, maybe some of those relationships will last,
past the divorce. Yeah. I know with my husband's family, we had a funeral recently, and it was so great to catch up with everyone. It was a funeral from someone in his family. It was someone that was important to me, and it was so lovely, like that I can still have relationships with them. It's not like we ring each other all the time, but I can go to a family event and or I can have dinner with my ex and his partner with the kids when there's a birthday, and it's really lovely. Like I genuinely want to see my ex be happy with his partner, so that's the beauty of an outcome where it is amicable and there isn't all that hate and anger and stuff in the background. So,
but sometimes even if the relationship is, so I can talk to a person and the relationship is completely bitter. But if I can get them to understand that even though that's where you are right now and you're bitter, if you think differently, the outcome for both of you will be differently. And in a lot of cases, it just takes one person to be the bigger person and the other person will follow suit.
yeah.
If you're angry, then you make the other person angry. But if you come from a place of kindness and love and thankfulness, then that person will also change how they treat you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tam, well, thanks so much for this chat today. I'm sure there will be some people out there that know they need to speak with you. So how do they get in contact with you?
So they
You never discuss your book either. Like you've got a book that people can find on your website. But yeah, how what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
So they can get to me either via my website on the contact page, so it's www.tanyasummerton.com, or on my Facebook page, there's a call now button. You can press that and give me a call.
And what's the name of your Facebook page?
So it's Tanya Summerton Divorce Angel.
So how do you spell Tanya Summerton?
So it's Tanya, so I'm a Y, and Summerton, Somerton.
Awesome. So they've just, if they go to your Facebook page or they go to your website, they can send you a message through there and organise to have a quick chat with you to see if what you do will help their situation.
That's right. And even if, as you know, I have more conversations where I head people to someone else or refer them to someone that might be better off. That's what I'm all about. Sometimes I can't help everyone, but the people I can help, I love to help. And if I can't help you, then I will head you down the right direction or send you to a resource that might be able to help you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today, Tan.
Thanks, Trace.